This is Adrian.
And this is Craig.
And you are listening to Cash Talk. You can find us on Instagram at @TheAdrianHall, @FinancialFowler, and @CashTalkPodcast. You can also email any questions, concerns, or judgment to cashtalkpodcast@gmail.com.
And now for the Legalese.
Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.
Registered representative securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC, investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, Inc., a registered investment advisor. Cambridge, Movement Mortgage, and Cash Talk are not affiliated.
Movement Mortgage supports equal housing opportunities, NMLS number 39179, Adrian Hall, NMLS number 1752332, NMLSconsumeraccess.org. All right, thanks. Here's the show.
Okay, Adrian, so when you first start working with somebody, I mean, I'm sure you probably have had a couple conversations with them about the, potential of being a home purchaser or a first-time mortgage applicant. But at some point, you have to collect documents, statements, bank statements, investment statements, what have you, from a prospective home buyer to verify their financial information and their credit worthiness, and just to kind of make sure that they're a good risk for the mortgage company to take on. And so I actually also have to collect a lot of documents, financial statements and things in my work as a financial planner. Do you ever run into clients and potential clients, prospects that are having trouble gathering the proper documentation or statements that you're asking them to turn in?
I've had people have trouble gathering their government ID, Craig.
Yeah. No, the answer is yes.
Yes.
Oh man, I feel your pain. So we'll go ahead and we'll gloss over the government issued ID, because I'm hoping that our listeners, I've gotten that part down. But moving on to a bank statement. Let's say we got to see bank statements, right? We got to see spending data and income. We got to verify income, things like that. How often do you have someone ask you how to go about getting a copy of their bank statement, just for like their checking account? Do you have that question a lot?
I would say what actually comes up a lot, and it speaks to the culture of, I don't want to say mismanagement, that's not it. The culture of just instant go, go, go. I will have people who don't quite know how to find their bank statements, but they can get you a screenshot in 5 seconds flat and show you their available balance right there on the spot. But there's,
right.
And in lending, as an example, you need to see the transaction history to make sure there's no money laundering going on. There's no undisclosed debts. You're not going in negative every 5 seconds, things like that. And a lot of people, I will say, struggle to get their hands on an actual statement, whether it's online or even like going in your mental filing cabinet and saying, oh yeah, I can also go down to my local branch and ask for one. So right. Yeah.
So I'm that was a really great way to answer that question. I deal with the same thing, and a lot of the times I'll have someone send me like a screenshot of their investment dashboard or their online banking dashboard, thinking that that's a statement. And usually I'll have to explain, hey, there's actually an official statement that we need to look for. And so I guess that's where I'll start is, Adrian and I were talking before hitting the record button for this episode and just thinking about what we could, talk about today that could be helpful. And we thought that just talking about financial statements in general, where you can find those and why they might be important, would be helpful to some folks. So just aside, that's what we're talking about, financial statements. But I think the first thing to kind of define is what makes the official financial statement or bank statement for your checking account or banking relationship as a whole different than just a screenshot of your balance or like your banking dashboard. Well, the first difference is that a statement has a specified time period that is attached to the value that is shown on the statement. So you'll have, maybe it's a month, 30-day time period. Maybe it's a multi period zone that you're looking at. Maybe you have 90 days that you're looking at. But at the top of your statement, if it's an official statement, it's going to have some date range. So that's one thing that's really important and is specific to a bank statement, and one differentiator from just taking a screenshot of your balance. Another big difference between just taking a screenshot of your mobile banking, a website, or what have you, is that when you have a statement, especially from a checking account, you will actually get a list of transactions, and you'll actually have a list of transactions on investment statements as well, but we'll get into that in a moment. Adrian, what has been, in your experience, the most important reason, the most common reason why you would want to go take a look at the transactions on your bank statement?
Well, I got a simple answer, and then I'll answer your question. One thing that a bank statement has that a screenshot does not is your name, for starters.
That's true. Very true.
We're conducting official business a lot of times, so we need official documents. But some of the big things, like off the very top of my head on why you want to be holding on to it, is it shows you black and white all the details of every transaction that's happened. So like something that happens with fraud a lot of times, people who, get your debit card number or compromise your identity or get leaked in some big major company's database, how 21st century life is. One thing that will happen is a unscrupulous person will try to do a couple of false transactions. They'll do something low and go to like a local Walmart or something and buy a few packs of gum or maybe a ironing board or something, $10, something small, because it shows them two things. Number one, it says, all right, cool, look at this, boom, the account is open. And number two, it starts to teach your bank that those transactions are legitimate because you didn't fight it. So then 5 minutes later, they're like, all right, great, we're going to go here and get all these gift cards out of the gift card aisle and load on up with $14,000 worth of gift cards and be gone. And I'm not saying that's what happens. That's drastic. If your account fell in the negative, $14,000, you probably know it. But it shows you the specifics into regards of like, this is the exact time that stuff happened, not just the date, but the time. This is where it happened, whether it's the store or the processing center, the store number is attached. If it was a debit card versus an ACH, which is automated clearinghouse, something where they had your routing number, it gives you those finer details. And from a business perspective, those finer details can be telling as to your overall financial picture. Because like in mortgage world, we see your credit report and we see what's going on there and your car payments and your student loans and all that stuff. But if you go get a payday advance loan, that's not going to show up on your credit, but it's going to show up every other Thursday that you're paying $200 somewhere. And that is something that's visible on a bank statement. So that's why a lot of times people will care.
Right. Perfectly well said. So one thing that I hadn't even thought about is the extra detail on the transaction from the actual official statement than from your, dashboard or your mobile banking app. Sometimes when you look at your transaction list on your mobile banking app, you'll see something that was actually you, and you can't even think of what it is because it's some obscure acronym. That's for efficiency on your mobile banking app or something. And so, just even if it's not a fraudulent charge, sometimes you may look at your list of transactions on your mobile app or something like that and see something that you don't recognize. And that's a perfect reason that you would want to go get your official bank statement, even if you're not applying for a mortgage or what have you. So that's a really good point right there, is just to drill down on smaller details that would not be included from your dashboard or your just normal login where you may take a screenshot. All Are there any other like big issues you run into as far as just normal bank statements? What other types of financial documents do you have issues collecting, or are there any others that you have issues collecting?
I would say one of the big ones, bank statements are a thing. So like we talked about all of that, but it also gives you the specifics of the person in front of you, like your account number. So you know what account you're looking at, the debit card number that's attached, all those details. Some of the most common ones that are interesting that people don't even keep up with. And I'm going to say the word audit and come right back to it because audit's horrifying. So W2s and tax returns, or 1099s if you're self-employed. When you are producing an income, a legal income, you declare it to the federal government, and there's a whole conversation that happens there, but we'll stop for this podcast. You get these documents like a W-2 or a 1099, and that's what you go file your taxes with. A lot of people will file their taxes and then take that W-2 and shove it in between the seat and the gear shift in their car. And then it lives there for about 7 more months until eventually they spill some Coke on it and find it and say, uh-oh, and throw it away. And then a little bit later, they need it for some reason. Maybe it's a loan, or maybe it's the fact that the government can audit your taxes up to, I think, 3 years back in history. And they're going to want to see those documents. And if you don't have them handy, you can get it. You can go to the IRS website and get it, and it takes a few days to receive. But that's one of those details where like something people don't think about is pay. Like I keep referencing loans, but like let's talk about pay for an example. You get your W-2s and maybe the amount's different or the address is different. Like there's some information on there that you could use to reconcile and make sure that there was no issues with your time clock throughout the year, or that they didn't overly tax a bonus you were supposed to get, or different things like that. Ultimately, I'm a little type A and I keep all my stuff, but I've tried to make a habit of like taking a picture of it when I have it in my hand and saving it to my email. And then I'll go save it to like my OneDrive or Google Drive or cloud-based whatever. But that's a common one. Tax returns, like I mentioned, are a common one. If you have any 401k investment, retirement type accounts, like I'd say a lot of people accidentally mess that one up because you don't use it. So it's just hiding. And they're also real dense, lots of information on it. So it's hard to read. You open it, you see, okay, cool. And you put it on the counter and it disappears. And then when it's time for you to do anything with the 401k, withdraw from it, roll it over, just see what the terms are, rebalance, anything, you have no idea where that form is. And you probably can't even remember what company administers it because you don't even know where it is. So I'd say those are some of the more common ones that come up more than you think, but get lost more than you realize also.
Right. I think that you just kind of listed off all of the documents that I had in my mind that people might forget about or just forget to keep track of. And as you were going through that list, I started thinking about my own personal situation, and I'm thinking, I think this holds true for the bank statement or just the checking account statement issue we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. We have become so comfortable with our phones and access to information that I think folks that are our age and a little younger probably don't have as much of a natural inclination to file things away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we have always, we've kind of grown up being able to get whatever we need on our phone, right? And I don't know about you, but, when I was in school, definitely was going towards, everything being on the computer. And, I can't remember a time ever in my life when I've actually religiously opened my bank statements that I got in the mail. Like, I'll definitely keep them in a folder, but I don't open those envelopes usually because I usually rely on going to my online banking website to download a statement there.
Yeah. And I can back it up a page. Checkbooks. I remember my mom sitting down and actively balancing her checkbook. And like at the time, I didn't know what the hell she was doing, and I also didn't care. I'm old enough now to know, okay, what she was doing is like, we couldn't just open up our app and boom, there was our transactions and our balances. She was saying, all right, so at the beginning of the month, I had $464. And then I went here and bought gas. Let me write that down. And then I went and got groceries. Let me write that down. And then we had to get clothes. Let me write that down. That's what was actually happening. And I know for myself, I write probably more checks than a lot of 30-year-olds do. And all I do is like write the check, hand it to the person. I'll go into my online banking, transfer it over, make a little note on there because you can give memos and comments and whatnot and say it's for this check number. And then at some point in the next few weeks, I go back to make sure that that check actually cleared and the money got withdrawn. And then I move the hell on with my life. And it's maybe not a good practice, but it makes it easy, I guess, to recognize. It makes it easy to not keep up with stuff because you can just go look, you can go look, you can go look. But then when it's time that you actually need the hard document, whether it's a PDF or a paper one, your brain, I feel like your brain works like a filing cabinet where when you need something, like how do I make a meatloaf, for an example, your brain goes into a filing cabinet, scrolls back to M, picks out, I say scroll because, definitely filing cabinet technology, whatever, scrolls back to the letter M, pulls it out and says, okay, this is the meatloaf file. And a lot of times that file, all it says is go to Google. And then you go to Google and you figure out how to do it. And so a lot of times with documents, I feel like people do the same thing where you're like, hey, I need to see my bank statement for whatever reason. I need to see it. And your brain doesn't even think to go to avenues to get it. You go to where you go, which is boom, your app or your online banking. And here's the transactions. What more could you possibly want? But a lot of those apps and websites are built to be user friendly. So they take a lot of the important stuff off so that you can just see the necessities. And when it comes to our very old, archaic financial system, we need the necessities, not just the highlights. So that's my 2 cents.
No, that's really good. That's important to point out. That's something that I meant to say earlier, but I forgot. And that is, even on your online banking or your mobile app or what have you, there usually is a way to request an official statement, right? Like for download as a PDF or what have you. But it's not always super obvious where to find that, especially depending on what institution it is. So one little tidbit is if you're ever having trouble finding a document that your mortgage lender or your investment advisor or someone may need, it's a good bet that your advisor has helped countless times another person find the same document. So just ask. It's not like you have to figure it out on your own. We are here to be a resource to the people that we work with, obviously. But even for me, sometimes I will help an investment client or a retirement plan participant try to find a statement, an official statement for their account. And I'll be sitting there with them looking at their mobile app, and sometimes it's impossible to figure out how to get a statement. And I'm a professional. I do this for a living. So if it's sometimes difficult for me to find it, find an investment statement, you better believe it's difficult for someone else in the same situation. So it's not a bad thing to ask for help. It's not like you're dumb if you can't find your statement. Sometimes it's just more difficult than it should be. Honestly,
I can give you some one-on-one insider banking stuff on that one. So first off, your bank or credit union or financial institution or whoever you use, by federal regulation, has to keep, I'm pretty sure it's 7 years of bank statements. I've not worked in a branch for 5.5 years, so it may have changed and I could be wrong, but I think it's 7 years. And on the apps, like Real Talk, the financial system is built on a lot of third-party agreements. So your mobile app and your online banking are not owned by your bank. They're owned by another company that sells financial services products two banks. And so they're getting various bits of information. They're not getting everything that the banking system has. But a lot of times you can set it up to where you can get your online statements. And honestly, a lot of banks and credit unions will charge a fee to mail it to you or put it online for free. But they won't always, like I said a moment ago, in the interest of being user friendly, they won't put it on the app. They will put it on their website somewhere. And even then, it may not always be somewhat obvious, because in their world, you can just open it up and click on your checking account and choose your dates, and everything you want should be right there because it's all simple. You shouldn't need the actual statement, right? But by regulation, it exists. It is out there. So if you can't find it, don't think you can't go down there or pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I'm gonna need these. Can you get this to me? And they have to. So that's another reason why it's always tough, is it's not made for it to be accessible, because they don't and can't put all the content of your entire banking profile on a very easy to use, intuitive, short-sighted app.
Right. No, that's a great point, actually, that the technology or the software that goes into these mobile banking apps, a lot of the times is the same software across many financial institutions. So you're exactly right. And sometimes it's managed by a third party, or it's just aggregated information done on the back end of things. And that is a really great point. I hadn't thought about that from the banking side, but I see that every day in the investment world. It's the same phenomenon that you just described, which is you got software companies and tech companies that are selling platforms to investment firms that offer a nice user-friendly technological dashboard, and it's very similar to from company A to company B, right? And so if you start to get an idea of where to go to look for statements, you'll start to get better at it as you have more experience, because like we're saying, it's similar across the board. So once you kind of get it down, you usually will figure it out and figure out how to get to the document that you need. But worst case scenario, you call somebody, they send it to you. But as far as investment statements are concerned, I'm just looking at something that I was working on earlier today, and it's an investment statement that a prospect from California sent to me, and really nice lady looking for some objective help and some advice on her portfolio. And I asked her to send me a specific statement of one of her accounts, and she was a little overwhelmed with that request because, and I understand now, after she sent me her full statement, she was just not sure what to send me. She had the one big PDF file. She didn't really know what to send me. And so at the end of the day, I said, hey, just send it all to me. I will find what I need to. It's okay. And she was very thankful, and I'm happy to do that. But the reason that this person, she's a very sharp tack, someone that's had a nice long career. This is not a user error. This is just an example of why statements and financial documents can be overwhelming to anybody. The statement that she ended up sending me is 84 pages long.
And I don't doubt that.
It's just insane, right? Because we're talking about 4 accounts, and we're looking at 84 pages, and we're looking at 1 month. We're looking at the month of December. So we're looking at a short period of time, 30 days, and 84 pages. We got 4 different account numbers, and they're all registered differently. They're titled differently. They've got different tax. They're treated differently for tax purposes. And so that's another important thing about your statement is you'll have your account number and the title. And a lot of times the title will give you a lot of clues to what type of account it is or why it exists. But I was asking for one statement, and she did not know where to get it. So she called her institution and just said, hey, I need a printout that just has everything on it that has to do with my account, my relationship with you guys. And she just sent the whole thing over. And it's just obvious as soon as I looked at it why it's overwhelming. You look at 84 pages, and on the very first page, you have your full portfolio balance, right? And then you're like, why do I have 83 more pages? So yeah, it's not uncommon to be overwhelmed by financial statements and to kind of honestly just be, kind of open one up and just not want to look at it. And that's totally fine. But one, I think, piece of advice that I think Adrian and I probably can both get behind is even if you don't go create like a type A filing system in your home office because you listened to our, podcast episode about filing and documentation and things like that. I liked Adrian's analogy of having the file cabinet in your brain. And if you can just leave Easter eggs to your documents, like a PDF link and an email sent to yourself or something like that. So whatever works in your mind, in your workflow, just leave little clues or Easter eggs that will be easy to uncover when you're in a pinch and you need to get back to a document. Like Adrian said, if he does sends an email or starts schedule an appointment or sends a check or something like that, he'll immediately send an email to himself or get on his online banking and write a memo that he can easily come back to later and look at the details, right? But just actively coming up with some sort of system that gives you a trail to work back to the document that you may need and having that in mind as you go through your life can help you get started on the right path. It takes a long time to get a filing system that works for you set up. So I think that's a good place to start. And I'm probably still there personally in a lot of ways. So, you ask me for a statement, I don't know, some random document, there's a good chance that I'm probably going to have to go look for it. And that's probably exactly what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go back into my brain a little bit, go through the filing cabinet, kind of like you said. And then I liked when you were talking about making a recipe, it may just say Google it. Or it may just say log into xyz.com and download the proper statement, right? But as long as you know, hey, I need my bank statement. I bank at, bank X. So I'm going to go to x.com and get my statement. Then that's an Easter egg that's left in your filing cabinet, right? And you know kind of how to get to what you need, even if it takes a few steps. I don't know. That's just kind of a starting point, little piece of advice that I might give to our listeners if they're wanting to work towards having a more, organized financial system in their personal life.
Yeah, I agree. Ultimately, you don't have to keep up with every single document, but you've got to keep up with your way to find it if you need it, because eventually you will.
Right. And it's much less stressful when you kind of have an idea of where you're going to find something than if you just have a list of things that you are overwhelmed with and you have no idea to where to even begin. I'm sure that stops people in their tracks all the time in the process of applying for a mortgage. So,
and I have one final comment I want to make for just the future you, because what do they say? Always try to make your next move your better move. If you know this is not you, and hey, look, I'm not going to keep up with my stuff. I'm not even going to pretend that I'm going to. This is just something to listen while I'm on the treadmill or washing the dog or whatever it might be. At least remember that you can ask other people for help getting those documents, but allow them the grace that it's going to take a minute because you chose not to keep up with it. And it'll all be okay. Like, I remind myself when I go down to the bank to go do something that, like, just to back up, I never go to the bank. But when I actually have to go to the bank, I'm always kind because I'm like, hey, I've done something stupid that has led me into these two front doors, and I need you a little more than you need me at this point to help me with this. Can you please help? And I'll sit here with a smile and the knowledge I have and the tips I can give, but ultimately I'm asking for help. So just don't forget that, like, we're all out here at the same time. That's why you're listening. That's why we're talking, just trying to make it a little bit easier. So whatever works for you, as long as it works and it's systematic and it keeps you clean and keeps your money protected, I think it's a worthy system.